Thank everybody for coming back here tonight. This is going to be episode 2 of Cosmogoth Round Table, titled Authors May Cry, Execution versus Intent. We're going to go ahead and give intros. We're going to have each of the writers on panel introduce themselves as well as their writing specialties.
Hey guys, my name is Soups. I'm a superhero fan. My specialty in writing for right now is short stories. I've got 2 in the works. One's post-apocalyptic adventure. The other one's more in the works, which I won't say much on that yet as I don't have anything put out yet.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is BK. I'm also known as the Blackest King. I'm an educator for middle school and a writer for kid fiction books. The genre I focus on is supernatural adventures and supernatural mysteries. And my current work at the moment is a supernatural story with some sci-fi twists called King's Cross Academy.
If you're familiar with the channel, you know me, Kaine Walker. I write dark fantasy and an experimental genre I'm calling Cosmogoth. And the only thing I'm doing is continuing to write my in-progress novel and running this YouTube channel to teach writing craft.
Hello, my name is Kara Brown. I'm an urban fantasy author. I also am one of the writers writers and editor over at Rippaverse. I'll pretty much write about anything. I've come out with a couple of books. I have a comic that's published over at Rippaverse, and the stuff I have in the works right now I can't talk about because I'm under NDA, but they are in fact in the works.
Okay, now that we're done with intros, we're going to start with our first slide of the night. What is authorial intent and does it matter? Define it in your own words. Should a creator's intent affect how we judge a story?
Alright, so in my experience, there are some authors and creators who I've noticed you have your own interpretation of some works. For example, I remember watching End of Evangelion. That was the one where you kind of have your own takeaway, and that divided a lot of the people in the fandom back then. And even the creator himself, he told you, like, kind of make it up for yourself. Now, I don't know if he walked that back by now or not. That was my takeaway of that. And there's also just movie directors who put out action movies who have no real intention other than just to entertain. So it's a bit of a hard one to say because I've had instances where sometimes their intent is just for you to make your own interpretation. So why it matters, or if it matters to those who actually have more to say, who actually want you to have something clear to take away out of that. Like with Spider-Man, right in your face of what they intended. And I think those are cases where it should matter. As for the second part of that question, should a creator's intent affect how we judge? Yes, I think it's necessary because you can have your own interpretation of for what you saw, but it's better to know what were you actually supposed to get out of it, because I think that would define whether watching something good or not. You were
Yeah, but a lot of the
the
times...
superheroes.
You're not done. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna one last thing I was just gonna say was, if you were watching a superhero story but you didn't get any of like the good morals out of it, what were they trying to say? Like if you didn't feel inspired or heroic after watching a superhero movie, at that point the creator's intention does matter.
I was going to say with the ambiguous ending stories, especially ones like Evangelions, a lot of the times authors don't know how they want to end it, so they just leave it ambiguous. I've run into that. Or you get a good example of an ambiguous ending, like with The Last of Us Part 1, where it's up in the air whether or not Ellie actually believed Joel until the second game came out and fucking ruined it. But you know what? We're not going to talk about that. So yeah, it's very up in the air for ambiguous endings.
When I consider authorial intention and does it matter, I believe an author's intent should matter in the work that they're given or the work that they're doing. When I see a work that has so much put into it, and there is a premise of an expectation, such as the back end reading of what we should expect in the story, given material that we are said to have ABC of whatever adventure, whatever story, whatever drama, whatever mystery. When we pick up that work, we read it expecting that. Now, an author's intentions, in my opinion, should be something that follows that to the letter, that gives us that kind of reading that makes us think and question what is going on in the story, lets us follow certain narrative points from their beginning to their conclusion, and allow us to pretty much have a worthwhile read of something that makes us leave it with either a thoughtful mind or a feel-good kind of vibe. One such example I would say is a good Spider-Man story, where we are given a story about a young man who has superpowers, can swing through the city and save people's lives, and we see him struggling the balance of that with his normal life and his given expectations of like what it is to be a superhero and helping people. And we get that in most readings that we have of said Spider-Man storylines. Now, in regards to should a creator's intent affect how we judge a story, I believe with what I said originally, it should follow that the author give their full intent to the story. That what they're saying in their byline should be something we should be expecting within the work. We should come into the story not expecting things to shift left and right and up and down and all around and leave us confused. Now, if the creator's intentions, however, are completely against said story, such as the Joker second movie, it's like we
Oh
come
my
in
God.
expecting to see something that had a certain narrative tone, vibe, a feeling, and expectations by the end that we were impressed with, even if certain things we don't agree with. But in the second movie, we see the creator's intentions where he pretty much showcases disdain for the very character that he's moving through the movie. And in the narrative of everything that happens, we fall not only out of love with the main character, but we see the character being destroyed in ways that turn the audience not only against the work itself, but also wondering why would the creator do something to what is expected to be a conclusion to an already good story.
Yeah, I'm still very on the fence about why they decided to make a sequel for that too. But I'm gonna go next. What is authorial intent? I would call it the central goal of the author or the written work. And does it matter? I would say yes, because you get situations like Rorschach where the intent of the author does not match what the audience actually receives from the piece or from the character. Apparently, we're not supposed to like Rorschach, but he kills objectively bad people, like the complete dregs of society, like murderers, rapists, child molesters, things like that. But somehow we're supposed to not like him because of his political leaning and the fact that he smells and that he's ugly, whatever that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So for reasons like that and situations like that, I think it should matter, because even though I might still enjoy the story, it's still a mark against the quality of not only the story but the creator themselves, because it's just, one, it's confusing, and two, it kind of takes points away from the story for me personally. Not necessarily for enjoyment, but for, like I said, for the quality.
For me, that definition is kind of the intention and the motivation of why somebody is writing or creating the thing that they're doing. It's like their guiding star. But I would honestly say that should the creator's intent affect how we judge the story? At the end of the day, I'm going to say no, just because as readers, we'll judge it however we want to. And even if we know the author's intent, it might give us like some background information to chew on, but it doesn't change how we feel about it. I'm going to use Lord of the Flies this time as my example, because I know what the intention of Lord of the Flies was, but there's a lot of times when I talk to people about it and they just don't understand the scope of the story, and they just think it's about little boys like killing each other on an island, but they struggle to understand that it's actually a core concept of civilization is only civil when one has the other to hold it accountable. But again, everybody's going to take it a different way. So that is my take on that.
If I may, just one thing, and I thank Miss Carol for saying this. One thing is that there are a lot of authors in current media who have this aspect of their writing where they say it is what you take from it. And before, such as with Lord of the Flies, there's a certain level of goodwill behind it. But I've noticed in certain writings, it's like you come into a story expecting one thing, but then there's a whole turnaround 160, 390, and you kind of wonder what it is you've just come across. And when you come to the end of said story, you often ask yourself, okay, but what was the intent of this? Because it seems like there's a beginning.
Who was this for?
Exactly. Who is this for? Because a part of me is thinking, if I'm reading a story, say Batman, I'm expecting to read a story about the world's greatest detective solving crimes and coming to a conclusion by the end. Now, if everything that happens in the story is the fall of Batman, such as constant mentioning of his age, the lack of his ability to do things, I have to ask, what is the author's intentions? Because at the end of the day, it's like if the story ends and Batman, quote unquote, turns it all around at the witching hour, part of me is confused because everything so far showcased that he wouldn't be able to do so. And then I'm often given an excuse saying, quote unquote, well, you either didn't see it or certain things you don't understand, or it depends on how you look at it. And I often think if I'm looking for 1, 2, 3 to lead to 4, 5, 6, and it doesn't, I often feel that the phrasing of, well, it is how you interpret it or how you see it, or certain things are more nuanced, but they are not, is a terrible approach from certain authors nowadays.
It can feel like a cop out a lot of the time, especially with the Batman series example you gave, where they're just kind of making Batman seem like a flawed old man. And it's kind of like, what's the point of this? It's Batman. Like, what lesson are we supposed to get from this? Like, people get old. Like, the only time I see that make sense is whenever they're setting up for Terry McGinnis for Batman Beyond. That's literally the only time it makes sense, because it actually gives us a character payoff to let you know, okay, it's really time for him to hang up the cowl. He's too old to fight, and he pulls a gun on a guy, and Batman does not do that. So yeah, that's when he was like, yeah, it's time to sit my old ass down. So yeah, no, I get it. Makes perfect sense. Can a story be good if the execution contradicts the intent? If the message and the delivery clash, can the result still work?
I'm gonna say it depends, because if the story at the end of the day
Cop
is
out.
entertaining and people, no, I mean, if people like it, then they like it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, here's a great example. Message and delivery clash. 50 Shades of Grey, my favorite book.
Oh God.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. Like, yeah. So like the message and delivery in that do not clash at well or clash well at all. And you know, I'm gonna be honest, it did a lot more harm for like the BDSM community than
Yeah.
it good. But even though the people that were advocating for the community were stepping up being like, yo, this is actually hurtful, there was a bunch of like stay-at-home moms that were getting horny over this shit saying how great it was, and they were just telling the people that were being like persecuted for it to shut up. And to this day, whenever somebody that I know that dabbles in that kind of play tries to talk to somebody who's never done it before, the very first thing they do is they talk about that fucking book. Right. And they're like, oh, I'm not into that because I don't like how it was in the book. And it's like, okay, well, it's not actually like that. It's like, no, I read the book. I'm an expert on it now.
It's funny how that works, huh? Oh, man. Can a story be good if the execution contradicts the intent? Fuck, I feel like I have an example of that, but I can't think of one right now. Shit.
Does the new Barbie movie count?
Actually, yes, it does count. Thank you. You fucking saved me. So yeah, the Barbie movie actually did work, but the execution definitely contradicted the intent, because you're not supposed to like Ken that much. You're supposed to like the Barbies way more, but Ken ends up being the best character in the movie.
I was gonna say, I mean, you put the literally me actor in the movie. Of course, everyone was gonna like that guy over the Barbies.
Yeah, there's also a point in the Barbie movie where all the Barbies are happy and they're in like committed relationships with all the male Barbies. And then for some reason, they just decide to fuck that up for absolutely no reason. And we're supposed to think that that's a good result of the story. I just don't understand. I mean, wait, can a story be good? Ah, shit, no. Okay, for that's kind of a bad example then, because like, just because I enjoyed the movie doesn't mean the story was good. Like, the story was fucking garbage in that movie. So like, if the message and the delivery class, can the result still work? I mean, yes, it can still work, but not on a technical level. Like, I can still enjoy it, but I'll still tear that movie to fucking pieces. Yeah, so I guess that's my answer. Like, emotionally, yeah, it does work, but technically, no, it does not work. Especially like, since, you know, because it's so bad, I could just laugh at it forever. You know?
I was gonna say, nah, not really. I mean, like, I know I gave you that Barbie example, but that was just because everybody liked Ryan Gosling.
No, it was
and the movie
a
contradicts
good example.
itself.
You cut out again.
It was a good example, but I feel like that's what, like, also what Miss Kuro was saying is that like, only because you personally enjoy it can it technically be a yes.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'd say no. My example being James Gunn's Superman made by James Gunn for James Gunn's universe.
I knew it was coming.
Oh dear.
Like, just taking, if nothing else, just looking at Superman and Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
Luthor was obviously intended to be like, you know, Superman's opposite, as typical, the nemesis, the one with the Grand Master Plan. Master Plan involves having a pocket dimension that with no real explanation of how you made it and why you have that in your first movie. It's not only a prison for all your exes, but also a lab where you can have literal monkeys saying mean tweets about Superman. You didn't really make a Grandmaster villain, in my opinion. The execution is that you made a glorified Redditor with too much money and time on his hands.
That was bad. That was horrible. The monkey was trash.
That's just going up based off of that, but the real thing was Superman himself to me. You have Superman being overly emotional. He can't handle an argument, or not even really argument. It was just an interview. He couldn't handle questions despite working for a newspaper company. The way he acted throughout the entire movie was like he was just an unsure dude who's my age in a 30-year-old man's body. And that's not supposed to be the case. And I know James Gunn, based off the movie and some clips I saw behind the scenes, Superman to be more vulnerable or human in quotation marks, if you could see my fingers doing emotions. But the execution is that you just got an emotionally stable man who hasn't figured himself out yet, which contradicts the super and the man. A lot of people on the internet was calling him Superboy. He's just fundamentally wrong. It had a deleted clip where Superman was yelling about how Lex would hurt his feelings and that made him human and that was a good thing.
Oh
It was
my god!
made no sense.
How late is it in his career as Superman?
The overall
film.
3 years.
He's 3 years in.
Okay, what? Okay, what? Go ahead. Just
No, wait. But I'm gonna try to end this off because specifically the first and the final confrontation these two have.
Jesus. All right.
First confrontation, you have Superman and Lex Luthor were just an entire meme of a rage baiter and the guy who took the bait. You made Lex Luthor look like the bigger man in the room. And the final confrontation, where one line they cut out where Superman literally said he hurt his feelings. They had to cut it out because even someone on the team realized that just makes Superman look weak. Like he has to prove himself to Luthor that he's human.
That was their
when it should never be the case. Superman.
That was their intention for that entire movie, and everyone keeps trying to deny it. They wanted to make Superman look weak. They did not want an archetypical Superman.
Yeah, and the intention was to have Superman essentially be weak, but guise it under him being human. And because of that, you just...
That's not the point of
Well,
Superman.
I guess... Right, exactly. That is the point of Clark Kent. So, if James Gunn really intended to ruin Superman's image, he did a damn well good job at that. I'm going off the basis that he wanted to make a good Superman, in quotation marks again, but completely failed at that because he wanted to make Superman look human, and he did that by not only destroying his alien origins, in fact, everything related to his alien side has been destroyed, from Supergirl being a drunk party girl, to Krypto ruining every scene that he's in, and making him come from a Viltrum origins story.
Basically.
Not at all actually appealing to the Clark Kent side, aside from a few scenes.
They paid Clark Kent lip service, basically.
Yeah. So, no, I don't think it works.
I would say that pretty much I was going to use Superman as my example.
Go ahead.
I don't like copying pasting. So what I would say as a good example of a story that has an execution that contradicts the intent, I'm actually going to take a kid's book I was recommended, and in my opinion, I feel that execution is contradicted by the intent. The book is called Princeless. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but
yeah, you showed me that. You showed me that book, I think.
Okay, so then this will probably be a little easy to say. Princeless is marketed as a comic book for young girls where the princess, quote, saves herself from being locked in a tower and pretty much proceeds to save her sisters who are also locked in a tower. Now, on its face, this sounds very good. This sounds very interesting. This sounds like something that I would recommend to my students. And without vetting the book, I actually did. I received the book back and I was told some very interesting things, one of which was a scene within the comic showcasing the main character, which is the young princess, single-handedly choking out her brother and smacking him across the face, and then in following pages doing it again. I proceeded to actually vet the book when the student gave it back to me, and I realized that if there was an intention from this writer, it was to try to make a young girl seem more than capable within seconds and more than able to handle anyone who came her way as the story progressed with relative ease. But the main character itself is someone who is way too smart for her age, has very interesting political views, and come the very first introduction of the play of the pages showcases a very interesting race allegory that paused me for a moment and made me ask the question, who is this book for? Because if the execution was to make a book for young girls to see a character that is independent of certain things, there were a lot of ways they could have done it. Because from the intentions of what I see in the book, it feels like there was a political message of young girls single-handedly taking on the world and apparently empowered simply because they are just powerful if they choose to pick up the sword and be so. Now, if the message and delivery clash, do I think that the result can still work? I unfortunately I don't think so. This book by itself showed me what happens with the message that it had and its delivery. And I honestly think to myself, if you're looking at it from a surface level and don't look deeper, you could possibly see this work as a passable experience. I know I'm contradicting myself here a little bit, but if you look at the story deeper for what it showcases, it presents itself off as a political work in an elementary school book guide. And in my opinion, it's not something that should be there, especially if the message is something that's supposed to give young girls a sense of strength and independence, but instead makes them look like brats or makes them look like they have some sort of political agenda. And in my opinion, that should not be the main focus of a fictional work for young people.
Yeah, of course not. That's gotten way too common nowadays where they're trying to put forth political messaging in children's stories. It's just kind of unfortunate for the times we live in.
The biggest takeaway is just don't make stories with the message all over it. Now, if an author makes a work that's like meant to be politically antagonizing, does that count as a successful work for them? Like, it's a bad story for all of us, but do they count it as successful themselves?
I would imagine so.
Yeah, I think that depends on the reaction. There was actually a story that came out a while ago. I say a while ago, I think it was 2 years ago. And this lady clearly wrote it to like antagonize a whole bunch of I don't know what demographic it was, but I'm gonna find the blurb to share with you guys real quick, and then you guys can have a giggle at that. Give me 1 second. Here you guys go. This is the book blurb for a romance novel. Let me know what you think of it.
No.
Oh my god.
Huh. I have to reread that.
Read it in your mind, man. Miss Kara, how did you survive that?
Well, so somebody sent that to me and they were like, "Is this a real book?" And I was like, I looked at it. It was on Amazon, right? And that was in fact the book blurb for it. And I was like, "Wow, that's impressive." But the equally impressive thing was the fact that it had 120 reviews and was at 1.5 stars. But everybody who basically review bombed this book. They basically bombed it because they didn't want to deal with the politics in it. And I had like an objective question, which was like, is the story bad? Is it written poorly? Like, is there any details on that? But I think what happened is somebody wrote that book to aggravate a group, and they succeeded. So I'm sure they got some giggles out of it, mostly because they still had to pay to read that book, and that was 100+ reviews, so they definitely made some money on it.
Normally I'd be mad, but that was just so funny reading to myself. Like, it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was horrible.
It's
I would
it's not
absolutely
something
review
I would
that.
ever read. Yeah, it's not something I would read or recommend to anybody,
Either.
but it's definitely a thing where it's like, this was a book. It was published. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah, my second favorite after that was Romancing the Coronavirus.
Oh God. Okay.
No,
No, no way.
you know what? I really feel my age now. I swear to God, I feel my age so bad.
What's your favorite example of great intent ruined by poor execution? And what story did it better? Call out a story with solid ideas but botched delivery, then offer a comparison that shows how it could have been done right.
Hi, my name is Lord Inquisitor Dunn, aka B. Malachi Dunn. I've published 19 books on Amazon. I'm hoping to get up to 20 by the end of the year, and I hope to have an audiobook within the next year or so. In terms of a good idea with very botched execution, I would say The Last Jedi is a big one because it has a decent idea where you have failure being the greatest teacher. It's like, okay, that's a good thing. I like it. I'm down. How do you execute it? Honestly, part of it is one, the movie's filled with inconsistencies and plot holes. But the main problem with it thematically is the fact that the movie itself has all of the characters fail, not because of character defects or character problems that they have, but because of the fact that the characters just keep getting screwed over by random chance. There isn't any kind of character motivation behind why Finn and Rose fail at Canto Bite other than they're stupid and decided to park on the beach. And then they still manage to get what they need through random coincidence. A hacker just happens to be there. I think a better example how to do Failures, the Greatest Teacher is actually the A Song of Ice and Fire series, where each of the characters in the series experiences a failure, especially the two Stark family leaders. The idea is that they both fail, but it's in what they're trying to do, but it's because of character decisions. Ned Stark dies because he wasn't willing to mix a bit of honor and strategy. He wasn't willing to play the game. Robb Stark lost because he valued honor a little bit too much and didn't understand that sometimes honor has to be set aside for pragmatism's sake. And because of that, he died at the Red Wedding, along with most of his bannermen.
Yeah.
So those would be the main ones that I can think of in terms of a story where failure is the greatest teacher. Compelling failure that's remembered and talked about is based in character decisions versus a story where no, failure is actually random chance unless you have something else to justify the rest of the story, which unfortunately The Last Jedi doesn't even have a Transformers level of entertainment.
Well, one of the keystones for failure being the best teacher as a lesson in storytelling is what they actually learn as a result of the failure. So, could you point out in The Last Jedi what the lesson behind the failure was compared to A Song of Ice and Fire?
I think that the main point of The Last Jedi is simply just that there isn't really one. It's basically that is the sum totality of it. The problem is none of the characters really learn anything. Even with Finn, his story kind of lifts out and he learns nothing. He kind of starts the film as kind of he's just trying to get to Rey, and then he gets radicalized. Why? There's just no through line, even with DJ. Like that whole plot can just be lifted out of the film. And then you have the whole bit with Rose stealing his win when he could have saved everybody, and then Rose just comes in and makes it so that the whole first order is torpedoed. And I think the only other big one is with Luke Skywalker in that film, where it's like, I failed to teach Ben Solo. And it's like, yeah, you didn't talk to him. But the problem with that one is just, oh, Luke Skywalker was this character assassinated. This is not even the same character. And that it's like, if this was a new character, yeah, but you're kind of burdened with the continuity. So that's a major problem. In terms of A Song of Ice and Fire, I think the main lesson is the short-term gains of evil behavior. If you look at the series as a whole, yes, the first 3 books have a lot of wins made by at least antagonistic forces to the Starks. But what you see in the A Dance for Dragons, the 5th book, which is the last book, the 6th book's never going to come out, the people who are the bad guys are rapidly falling apart because nobody likes them, nobody trusts them. And the people that were the good guys in the last few books, people who died at the Red Wedding, etc., the people under them still love them and want to put them back. And they hate the people that are in power because of their underhanded tricks now and want to get rid of them. And so I think that would be the main point of it.
I wanted to go next for this one. This entire roundtable discussion was actually inspired by Netflix's Devil May Cry as compared to the actual video games. The game that they took the most inspiration from was Devil May Cry 3. They kind of butchered the entire mythos of the series where, you know, demons are supposed to be evil, but for some reason they decide to make them complicated, quotation marks. And essentially they just make them some sort of allegory for oppressed groups, and that's not how Devil May Cry works. Like, when you do that to the demons, you kind of take away the entire point of Devil May Cry. Like, one of the central points of it is supposed to be breaking chains and being the exception to the rule. So much of an exception that you actually cause a grand good to happen. Like with Sparta, he was the only demon to ever gain human ideals like compassion, the ability to love. And he actually chose to become human because of his love for humanity. And, you know, that's how he ended up marrying Eva and giving birth to the Devil Twins, right? So all of that gets cheapened when you make demons complicated, because at the end of it, in the Netflix version, Sparta is just a traitor and there's no real reason behind it. When you make demons inherently evil, then there is a reason behind it. You know, it's just kind of odd.
Not to mention Sparta gets thrown away to being like a typical deadbeat dad.
Oh yeah, they completely ruined that. Like Sparta was a presence father. He has 2 family portraits in like 2 of the games. Like he was there for his kids. He left behind the family heirlooms of Rebellion, Yamato, and both the amulet halves. I don't know why they decided to make him a deadbeat father for any other reason but political. I have no idea. Like whenever the demons are supposed to be the vice of man and humanity is supposed to be corruptible, that actually introduces more complexity into what they're trying to do. I could literally use Devil May Cry 3 to show why the original Netflix series is worse. Sparta is no longer special if you make demons complicated. Devil May Cry is supposed to be an entertainment medium, not a soapbox for your political ideology. That's another reason why the game is better. The characters are actually more complex in the game, because if Sparta is special like he's supposed to be in Devil May Cry 3, you get his sons being the flesh-made avatars of his internal conflict, him being a demon but having human ideals. Dante is his ideological human half, Virgil is his ideological demon half, and it's their struggle against each other that makes Devil May Cry compelling, because at the end of it, they have the same goal. Virgil wanted power so that he'd never lose anyone close to him ever again, but he had to commit a lot of evil acts to do it, and Dante wants to save humanity in the same way his father did. So that's where you get some of the central themes of the story, and I just think the Netflix Devil May Cry is like one of the worst travesties to ever be a part of fiction, if I'm being honest. So yeah.
Ouch, tell us how you really feel.
I
mean,
yo,
that's it.
I'm not gonna lie. I know you've been wanting to get that out for a while, so
I don't even know if I said everything I could have said about why it's bad, but that's enough. That's plenty.
that's more than enough, trust me. All right, so when I think of what's your favorite example of a great intent ruined by poor execution and what story did it better, I recently had the pleasure of watching a Disney series called Ironheart, where the byline is about a young girl genius who takes her invention and lives up to the legacy of Tony Stark. And I also had the great pleasure of rewatching a movie called Big Hero 6. Now, there is only a few other shows that have that mark, but I believe Ironheart holds a current candle when it comes to great intent that is ruined by poor execution. The story literally showcases a super genius young young woman who's 18 years old, and she currently is admitted into MIT, one of the greatest schools in the world, for the past 4 years. And within the first episode, we realize she's done nothing to better her degree. She has been selling completed projects to schools all over the state area. And when she gets caught in doing so, she proclaims that she is being held back by either people who want her to think small or put her in a position of a, quote, small room at some high-end job with people she doesn't like. So the story is supposed to be about a genius, and a super genius at that. In the first few minutes, nothing she does makes sense, and it confuses those who are watching, because a lot of what she's doing and a lot of what she's saying contradicts what is supposed to be a super genius intellect, which is supposed to be the intent of the writers, and the execution so far is poor, and we're in the first 5 minutes. By comparison, the story that did it better would have been Big Hero 6, where we see a young boy named Hiro Hamada who introduces himself into a robot fighting arena. And he showcases how he's incompetent at first, only to turn the tables around on the people he's facing and prove himself to be a master bot fighter. Mm-hmm. Now, he's mentioned by his brother in the few minutes that passed. He graduated from high school at 13, and that pretty much his intellect puts him over the bar, similar to Riri Williams. As Hiro goes on to say, "Oh, what do you want from me? To go to a college where, quote, I already know everything that people there know?" And what happens is, and this is the point of the delivery, is the fact that when we see Riri Williams' entire situation, her situation isn't one where she learns a lesson within her moment of, quote, clarity with her intelligence, getting her kicked out of school for selling papers. She instead steals property from the school, which is an Iron Man suit she made, then proceeds to go around and try to find ways to, quote, get her suit rebuilt after it's damaged, collect on an AI, and process her intelligence her super genius, and ends up having her work for a criminal organization. Hiro Hamada, however, ends up being shown a college where people are advancing the future, doing things with their great minds and their gifts to pretty much try and revolutionize the world that is to come. He gets challenged by people who he sees who make devices that inspire him. He is shocked by the level of intellect so many other individuals have. And after meeting one of the creators of the world of robotics in that universe, he is humbled again to be told, well, you can choose to go on bot fighting, which seems very easy for you, or you could put that big brain of yours to work and try to win this competition and showcase how you can revolutionize the future, which he does, and he wins.
Yeah, that's already infinitely better than anything that was set up in Ironheart. Like, first of all, that character's never humbled by anything ever. Second off, Harada actually learns something from someone else to make him a better person. Also, something that does not happen in the Ironheart show. So yeah, you properly illustrated why the genius archetype should only be written by people who actually know what they're doing. Oh yeah, what is that saying? The character is only as smart as their writer. I don't know what kind of paint chips they were eating when they wrote Ironheart, but they should really get tested for lead poisoning.
First of all, Black, you said live up to Iron Legacy. Are you sure you didn't mean steal?
She did a lot of that in the show, yeah.
With respect to stealing Tony Stark's legacy, she did little of stealing Tony Stark's legacy, as very little of what she did was similar or to the point of Tony Stark's legacy. Though the intent of the writers was apparently to have her go through the same, if not similar, arc beats.
What did she even need the money for? Why was she even selling test answers?
So she needed the money to create an AI and suit. So
just so dumb. All she needed to do is to use her own brain to map her friend's memory onto the AI.
You are breaking up a lot, but I know the part of the story you're talking about.
Okay.
That's good. No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, mechanically, she goes through no hardships, and there's no reason to like her, and she could pretty much get funding for anything she wanted. She built a supercomputer in order to fix a forgotten password. Like, do you not realize how overkill that is?
The setup for that story just kind of implodes when you realize she has a full ride scholarship paid for by Stark Industries at MIT. So, like, what the hell could she not get with that? It just doesn't make any fucking sense, like, on the onset.
She also has Wakanda on a phone call.
We could spend all night talking about Ironheart, but I don't want to. Yeah, I don't. I've only seen clips.
So an example that I have that had solid ideas but a pretty trash delivery, it's a book. I don't know how to quantify this book, but I'm going to describe the book to you. It's called Dark Strangers The Dream. It's written by I.T. Lucas, and the story is as follows. Sissy, a young woman. Now, it reads like Sissy, but they keep saying her name is Cece, but it's spelled like Sissy. So Sissy, a young woman plagued by strange dreams, encounters an enigmatic and powerful man who she sees tied to her visions. Her romance sparks quickly, driven by fate and supernatural pull rather than mutual understanding. And as their relationship intensifies, the imbalance of power and lack of emotional groundwork raises more red flags than genuine trust or love. So that's the synopsis of the book, and it's the only good part of the book that's written. And this book is supposed to be kind of like an urban paranormal romance, but the truth is that all of the things that make it paranormal are never really fully explained. They're very confusing and contradictory. So at one point when I was reading the book, I was like, oh, okay, we're talking about vampires. She's seeing a vampire, and it's like, oh, I'm not a vampire, I'm an angel. It's like, oh, okay, you're a vampire angel thing? I'm actually a pre-mortal god. And it's like, wait, what the fuck are you? Are you an angel, a vampire, or a god? And it can't make up its mind what it wants to be. And then you've got your typical Mary Sue shit that happens in there. Everyone's obsessed with her. One guy has to have her. His rival kidnaps her, and then she's kidnapped back. And all women that say mean things to her are eventually verbally slapped down by the men to go into the corner. And Sissy literally doesn't do anything. In fact, I think there's a couple of scenes where she can't even walk into a room. She's carried around a lot. So I don't know what kind of weird mental ill fantasy story this belongs to. But again, when I read the back of the book, I was like, this could be fun. And then I read it and I was like, wow, this is trash.
That's always that's how it goes. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Vampire Angel.
You told me to find a poor example, and I was like, man, I can't remember. Was it like a vampire or an angel, or like what was it? Like I remember being confused, and I actually went to ChatGPT to see if it could find the answer. ChatGPT is also confused. It's not sure.
What the fuck?
I mean,
It kind of sounds almost like the Shadows over Innistrad. But
No, it's not very good. But a comparison of how it could have been better. So my main grievance honestly has to do with the world building. Like I don't know what's going on. I don't know who these characters are. You know, it's all kind of written in vague terms. And I'm sure when they wrote it, they're like, oh, I just want the reader to ask questions. And I was like, no, I'm just fucking confused. Right? Now, my counter example that I would like to propose, if we're allowed to do that in this, or are we just giving our poor examples right now?
Oh no, that was the point. I want you to use your better example to highlight why the other one's so bad.
All right, so since this is supposed to be paranormal romance, we're going to stay within that genre. So there's another book, it's called Radiance by Grace Davin. I actually really like that book. I recommend it to everybody, even men who don't read romance. I'm like, you should read this book. You would like it. So the story follows a human noblewoman and a Kai prince. Now, I think in this universe, the Kai are actually drow, because that's how they're described, but obviously she can't say that they're drow, so she calls them Kai. They enter in an arranged marriage meant to secure political alliance between their people, and at first they find each other physically unattractive, but through humor, kindness, and mutual respect, they form a genuine bond, and their bond gradually deepens into love, proving that emotional connection can transcend cultural and physical differences. I like this book because it's well thought out. The world building is well thought out. Shit is explained to me, but it's not like info dumping on every page. It's usually kind of subtly done in conversations and passing, and the conflict that happens within the story is actually really engaging. There is tangible threats that happen, and the story does end on a note that leaves me feeling satisfied, much like these two characters after they bone. It's a good time. I would recommend it, but it drives me absolutely crazy when people try and write these romance stories, but they do it like Dark Strangers is complete amateur writing, at least at the time I read it. I don't know if maybe Lucas took this story and rewrote it, because sometimes authors, when they get completely smashed, will like go and like rework it, like that one TikTok author that says that she's rewriting her shit right now. But your job as an author and as a creator, and I'm talking about books, I know you guys are using movies and TV shows as your example, but with books, you have to submit your reader into your world. I don't say you have to give them like the complete rules like Brandon Sanderson, but you have to give them enough that they are at least there with your characters following and understanding. If you leave them constantly confused about who, what, where, when, and why, and if I can't tell if you're a vampire, an angel, or a primordial god or whatever, then I just end up looking very frustrated at the end of the experience.
Yeah, the book might as well be written in Braille.
Yeah, pretty much.
Does anyone have anything to add to that before we move on to the next slide?
My Superman rant.
Continue.
There was an idea. There is a way to make Superman look human or feel human. There is a way to do that. And the movie that I think did it would be the first Superman movie. Still the best one. Because that one was a slow build-up of Superman as a baby to the man that he is. So there's the character growth, something that the new movie is sorely lacking, where you see throughout his life him struggling between blend in and be human. And you see him grow to become a man that embraces both worlds through the Clark Kent disguise. He gets to have a life outside of Superman where he gets to just be human. You get to see him have other emotions other than the stoic, aura-farming American Patriot superhero, which, by the way, I feel like every adaptation of Superman after Returns kind of skipped out on the American way part of that. But not to rant for another day. But in terms of making Superman human, you've already had that with the very first one. Even Superman himself, as expressed emotions outside of just being cool. And it's something that James Gunn just completely botched.
Next slide, it's going to be who owns the meaning of a story, the creator or the audience? Once the story is out in the world, does the author's intent still matter, or is it entirely up to interpretation?
I would say that in terms of the author's intent, I think that only matters insofar as the artist's opinion matches the actual work that he wrote. And the reason why I say that is because there are certain things like House of the Dragon, for example, where it's relatively ambiguous in a lot of ways. And when the writers talk and give their interpretation of something that's relatively ambiguous, they make it worse by virtue of their commentary, even though what's there is perfectly fine, actually pretty good. It's why people don't like the House of the Dragon inside the episodes. I think another example is George R. R. Martin with certain adaptational changes. The problem is he doesn't even seem to remember his own work when he's talking about the adaptation, where there are other things that could totally spark a riot, and another thing entirely could be used to spark it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the death of this specific kid. So I think that it really just depends. I think the interpretation of the thematics is interesting to see how well the author succeeded in what he or she wanted to do, but I think it only really matters when it's like, okay, how much does this author's opinion line up with what they actually wrote? Are they just adding stuff, or are they forgetting stuff, or like not understanding their own work? I think that's my take on it.
Toriyama, and I think they're the Russo brothers for Endgame, I think it was, or was it Infinity War?
Bruce Brothers was for Endgame, yeah.
Yeah, Endgame, okay, yeah, he fought the Hulk in that one, and apparently they said that Thanos won because he had better technique, even though he had the Power Stone, but whatever. Yeah, so this question was inspired by comic continuity, though it could really go for anything. When it comes to whether or not the author's intent or the interpretation is owned by the author or the audience, people tend to go with what was better written and what they like more. Like with whether or not something is considered canon and non-canon, because technically it could be canon, but if it's garbage, no one really cares. So that's usually why for this question, I say the audience owns it more than anything, but only if it's so abysmally written that it kind of betrays what the integrity of the series was about in the first place. So it's still kind of conditional, but the audience interpretation, as far as where the series goes from that point on, is the deciding factor, in my opinion. At least that's what I've been seeing. I would say the audience owns it mostly.
If I may, I want to use a quick shot between my original examples and a final example in regards to something me and a friend have recently been watching. Okay, so back to my original examples of Ironheart versus Big Hero 6. When it comes to the meaning of the story, at this point, it's like it feels like it can go either way, but it really depends on the writing. There is this concept I've been noticing that reviewers have more views on the material that they've seen versus the actual shows at times, depending on how bad a show is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the story of the world and the author's intent, it really comes down to, like, when we talk about the interpretation part, that there is almost nothing left to interpretation because we are kind of given what we're given. With Riri Williams and Ironheart, we're given a story concept about a character who's supposed to be a hero. By the end of the story, she's done nothing really heroic. Everything she's done has been self-serving. Everything that comes into her, quote, turnaround phrase in the third act, where she's pretty much in danger of following her actions, is still self-serving. It's not to help anyone, it's just to help herself.
Yeah.
Now, when we have people who see this show, it's like the creators behind it may have made it, but the audience now, there's nothing left for interpretation for them, because it's like the author's intent was pretty much bare bone. There was nothing that was questionable or not. Everything she did was an action that followed a reaction. Now, when it comes to Big Hero 6, everything about it, even if you can say it follows a certain mechanical formula, there are talks of like how someone deals with depression following a death. There's talks about how one comes into being a superhero, despite like not being asked to do anything, but realizing there is a situation and there is a threat that needs to be stopped, and thusly they heed the call. There is a lot of struggling. There is a lot of, faults. There are a lot of failures. But at the end of the day, these characters rise up, meet the challenge. Eventually, even when they're failing, they eventually find different angles to get through said problem. And it becomes a media where pretty much we see the hero showcase and it looks and it feels good.
I think you can take it into account, but I don't think it's going to matter because you have some individuals who are going to want to believe what they want to believe about the work regardless. One example I can pull is from an essay that I read when I was starting college, and it was called A Good Man is Hard to Find.
Oh,
Yeah, it's an essay that basically follows this family when, they have, and it's by a forest where, some local prisoners got out and, things happen. And if you haven't read the essay, I would recommend that you read it. But we were told these were guided questions that the instructor gave us. And in the guided questions, it was like, well, in the story, who's the Jesus figure, right? And I didn't pick the obvious choice because for me, I didn't think that it would be that person. And I backed it up. Like I pulled citations and biblical references and all this other stuff. And even though that was like my take on it, and I explained it and I went deep into the pedagogy of it, my instructor was like, well, no, because that wasn't what the author's intent was. And I was like, well, I don't really care. Like, you asked me who I thought it was, and this is who I think it is. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. You can't use the author's intent as a beating stick, and that's kind of part of my point, right? Because when you have, damn it, I don't want to use Watchmen again. I'm going to use it again. When you have the creator of Watchmen telling you that Rorschach, you're not supposed to like him, but you write him in a way that people would, it's kind of like, yeah, no, you're wrong, author. This character is good. We like him. We're not going to hate him just because you say so, right? Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that point.
And I think in that situation, I wasn't doing it to be contrarian or anything like that, although I'm sure my instructor probably felt it was that way. But the reason I did it was because I really wanted to have a conversation about this with other students. I didn't want everybody to just go for the easy answer and be like, oh yeah, I totally agree with you. That's right. I was like, no, I think it's this and this is why. And that's part of the whole learning process when we have like discussions and back and forth debates and things like that. And if you tell everybody that I just want you to all come to the same conclusion on your own, and then you don't allow for that kind of academic discourse, nobody really learns anything. They're just memorizing what you told them to do. So anyway, that's my stance.
Or just skating by. Yeah, they're just kind of agreeing. You're just kind of agreeing so that we just pass along this discussion and go to something else. So yeah.
Like my middle school students.
Yeah. All right, so Soups, you didn't get your answer.
Aside from Black doing his Dankula laugh, I have two things I want to say that piggyback off what you were saying, Kaine, about that. One, there's two other examples you could have used. There's James Ironwood from Ruby and John Walker from Falcon and Winter Soldier. They were both essentially got the same Rorschach effect. They were supposed to be flawed characters that are supposed to fall in ways to make you fall out of favor for them. It happens makes you just sympathize and root for them even more. Essentially, you want them to win in a narrative because the good guys are just so awful, whether in what they do or just as people.
That is so true.
No, you like them, Soups. You don't understand. It's intention for you to like them. Therefore, you like them, Soups. I don't know what else to tell you. You're wrong.
Sure, I'm sure that whatever helps the author sleep at night, I guess.
Right.
No, but because you mentioned comic books, when you say people will flock towards the better written ones, I feel like that's more so if the better written one typically honors the one that the original founding author created, like Batman, X-Men, the X-Men one in particular. If it's a story that kind of honors what the original authors were making, that's kind of the ones that people go to. So technically, original author's intent still matters because if it's a strong foundation, that's the one that still matters the most.
There is one comic book called X-Men God Loves, Man Kills, I believe. And it's probably one of the greatest examples of, even if the author didn't intend there to be a racial element to it, the comic speaking to it does so in both visual and almost relatable concepts, given how he introduces the first mutant characters who die in the story. And whether or not the creator really intended this to happen, the story does a great job of dealing with racial allegories when it comes to humans versus mutants and the similarities that they really do have as a whole.
Oh yeah, you showed me that comic recently. Yeah, I did enjoy it. You showed me that scene with Magneto and those kids. Brutal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great example.
Is it really that good?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
God Loves, Man Kills. Get that comic.
Final question. Which should matter more, intent or execution? Wrap it up. If you had to choose one, which carries more weight?
Okay, so in this one, I'm going to make it quick. I believe intent should always carry the full weight of what your work represents. Like I said before, I'm working on a kid's book. The intention of it is to showcase kids dealing with situations that they themselves find hard given who they are and what it is that they need to change and having to deal with that change. And the intent of dealing with change is the point that I want to get across. Now, hopefully my execution is good, but even if it's not, I hope that the visual of their intent of changing as the story progresses is enough to carry over so that people can actually see, oh, they did go through a character arc. Oh, they did learn something. Oh, they have grown through leaps and bounds through the story. And like I said, hopefully enough, with the intention, if my execution isn't all that great, that those main points are met by the readers and appreciated by the readers.
I did not expect there to be that many interpretations of this question, because whenever I think of intent versus execution and which should matter more, I think of a story that was executed poorly, but the author intended for it to be a certain way. Again, leaning on the Netflix Devil May Cry versus Devil May Cry 3 examples.
I was gonna say it's a tough question. Theoretically, shouldn't intention roll into execution? Like, if
In
you
a
have a bad
perfect
intention,
world.
then the execution is gonna suffer as a result.
When it comes to writing a story, there's no such thing as a bad intention. Normally, you have a central goal, like what kind of theme, what kind of lesson, what kind of grand plan do you have for your written work? You know what I mean? So the word intent has a very stringent definition here as it pertains to story writing. Like what they tried to do versus what actually happened. Like, I tried to bake a cake and I didn't add any fucking eggs, kind of thing. But go ahead.
I feel like bad intention is a thing. I mean, you just brought up Devil May Cry. I brought up Superman. Like, there's bad intentions written all over some of these characters.
Well, I mean, that's kind of our opinion, though, isn't it? Because, like, they intended to destroy the character. I mean, that was their intent. I don't have to like it. I don't have to like it, but it was their intent.
So wouldn't that make it a bad intention?
In my opinion, like, not objectively. That's not the purpose the word intent is serving here. Like, it's not technical, empirical, or objective. It's like, what are you trying to do?
So I cannot say bad intent if it's something malicious.
I mean, you can,
Writing sense.
but it would only be your opinion. I mean, and the question is, which should matter more anyway? Do you value intention or execution more?
Right. I think I might end up walking this back in the future, but I feel like intention matters a little bit more.
Okay.
Just because
Wow,
if your
I
intent
did
is
not
good,
expect people to say intent. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, it's only good because of like personal enjoyment.
Yeah.
It's badly executed because it didn't go by the original author's intention, but it's good just because we personally enjoyed it. If you have like Lord of the Rings, it had a good intention behind it. Normally, I would feel like if you have a good intention, you would do your best to make the execution good too. Like have one fall into the other.
Okay, I understand your answer. You're using intention subjectively. I won't say it's not the correct way to look at it. I mean, it's definitely something to consider, but that's not what people usually mean when they say intent versus execution when it comes to story writing. Still a good answer, though. It gave me a lot to think about.
I would probably say the one that carries more weight is execution, because I've met plenty of writers who have really good intentions, but they can't walk the talk. And when you try and assist them with doing it, it's a very arduous experience. But if you can execute something really well and in a way that the reader finds enjoyment, then I call that a win. Everything else is just like icing on the cake. So that's my thought.
Yeah, execution was also my answer. That's why I was so shocked that the two of them picked intent. I said execution because people come to arguments about stories where you're like, this thing happened in the story and it kind of contradicts the thing that the author said should happen. And then they're like, well, the author's intent was this. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter because that's not what made it to the page. That's not what made it to the screen. That's not what made it to the fill in the blank. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a huge cop out. Like, I hate when an author gets in an interview or a fan gets in a discussion and they try to tell me something that very obviously was not in the show. Like, an example I had was how people were saying that Tien from Dragon Ball was an alien when that was never discussed in the show, and in all other external media he is listed as a human and stuff like that. I don't even know how stuff like that perpetuates. It's just kind of annoying. Another example, right? Before they made it canon due to cop-out, Nero being Virgil's son, literally impossible. They never intended, ever intended Nero to be Virgil's son. Ever. We literally have his light novels. If you read them, you will see that it's literally just an anomalous origin. He got attacked, his arm mutated, there you go. Like, he's not connected to the Sparta bloodline whatsoever. But for some reason, Capcom thought Devil May Cry wouldn't sell unless they adopted a shit fan theory. So here we are. So this might actually be an example of horrible intent and horrible execution, actually. But if you're just counting Devil May Cry 4, great intention in the beginning by Devil May Cry, where they undo all of the great storytelling they had for Nero. Horrible execution. So yeah.
Sneaking suspicion that you made this particular episode just so you could talk about your distaste for this.
For the Devil May Cry Netflix show, yes. It was inspired, yes. Devil May Cry 4 wasn't supposed to come up, though. That was just a spur of the moment thing.
How crafty and self-serving of you. I actually respect it.
No, I still wanted to hear everyone else's answers, though. Like,
But you really wanted to talk about this. So we found the real plot. So in your
Yes.
intention, would you say you executed it well?
absolutely. Just like the first roundtable discussion where I wanted to talk about the stupid wheelchair thing. But anyway, yes. Spite is going to be my motivation for pretty much all these talks, unless somebody injects some positivity into these and I adopt that instead. So yeah. Does anyone have anything to add before we close it out? I appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate Caro staying longer than she had originally intended. Sorry, by the way. We started off kind of shaky, but I think we stuck the landing.
It's okay. You guys are cool.
Thank you.
I have one last question to ask you. So, given how much everyone loved Devil May Cry 5, doesn't that still count as good execution?
No.
If we're going by Miss Carroll's earlier definition.
She had two criteria for what constitutes a win. That game had great gameplay and a shit story. So no, it's not a win. And it's a video game, so gameplay matters more than the fucking story, even though Devil May Cry was praised for both.
Did you just move the benchmark so you can
No.
still be right? Oh,
No.
okay. I don't remember these rules being set.
Wait a minute. You just said...
the goalpost.
I'm not moving the goalpost. I'm not. It's trash. I hate Devil May Cry 5. It's garbage. It's not good. It's fun to play though. It is fun to play. I will say that. Terrible fucking story.